Welcome to this long overdue episode of the Presbyterian and Reformed Churchman. It's long overdue for a lot of reasons. One, because I haven't recorded in a while, I think since General Assembly. And two, because my friend Rick Hutton and I, Rick is a ruling elder, we've been talking about this for over a year, maybe a year and a half. He's like a clock. He keeps telling me how long we've been doing this. And then we have Levi on with us, and we're going to be talking about internships, pastoral internships. It's something that's required in our Book of Church Order, and the church where Rick is at does a really good job with this. So let's do some introductions. Rick, you've been on a couple times, but why don't you remind our listeners what church you serve at, what your role is, and yeah, we'll leave it at that, and then we'll go to Levi, and he can tell us how to say his last name. I think it's probably simple, right? Bakerink?
Bakerink.
There you go. Okay.
You got it.
I was afraid. Good deal. Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm at All Saints Reformed Presbyterian Church in Richmond, Virginia. I've been a member there since we planted it back in 1984. Became a ruling elder there in 1998. And then came on full-time staff in 2016 as the church administrator. So I call myself a full-time ruling elder deacon now.
Yes. And another one we've been talking about for a while, Rick, is for you, me, and Mel Duncan to get on and talk like executive director, executive pastor, church administrator type stuff. So maybe we'll do that in a year and a half also. Rick was also instrumental on the team that hosted the 51st General Assembly?
Yes.
Which one?
Yeah, 51 in Richmond, Virginia.
In Richmond. Great location and great worship, and I know you were part of that. So thank you for that. And Levi, so Rick, why is Levi here? Besides being a good guy, and you know, he brings the age of us older guys down in this episode.
He's my young Padawan. So Levi was our guinea pig. Our first intern was Levi, and so he helped set the pattern for the way we do our internships. So he can speak to his experience of being an intern at All Saints.
Awesome. And Levi, all kidding aside, I mean, you get all the kudos and respect in the world. You have a lot of experience. Why don't you introduce yourself to the people here?
Sure, yeah. Well, it's thanks for having me on to join the discussion. But yeah, like Rick said, I was an intern at All Saints in Richmond, Virginia. That was back in June of 2020. A lot going on that year just around the world and around the country. But yeah, I did that, and then was at All Saints for a few years. Got married in Richmond, Virginia to my wife, Jess. We've been married since March 26, 2022. And then later that year, in October of 22, I took the call to be the pastor here at Christ the King Presbyterian Church in Joplin, Missouri. And I grew up in Springfield, Missouri. I was born and raised in Iowa, but my family moved to Springfield, Missouri when I was in high school. So this part of the country feels like home. So really excited to take this call. Coming up on 3 years, solo pastor here in Joplin. A lot of exciting things going on in our church. We're getting ready to move in September. We've been renting a space for the church has been around since 2007, renting and various locations, but we're getting ready to move into our own church building in September. So really excited about that. A lot of exciting things going on in this area of the country and in the Ozarks. So Rick told me to shout out our podcast. I learned, so part of my internship was learning that to be a pastor in the PCA, you have to have your own podcast. So, but my friend Dustin Ray and I, he's planting a church in Springfield, Missouri, that our church is serving as a temporary session of. And we started a podcast, Reforming the Ozarks, which is a way for us to connect our churches, keep our churches connected, introduce and explain different concepts about Reformed theology, Presbyterianism, Reformed faith and practice that are, uncommon in a lot of different areas of the country, but certainly very uncommon here. So, so that's a bit about me and about our church.
Yes. And so, man, you said a lot there that is going to be related to this. For instance,
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were a solo pastor at a church. I,
Hmm.
you know, maybe assumed you were assistant or associate pastor. And so the fact that you did have, I mean, everybody needs some form of internship. That's just BCO. But typically, it's not done to the way that All Saints does it. So, would you say your internship helped you secure that position? Did that
Oh,
play into it at all?
yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how much we just want to get into it, but I think the way that All Saints structured their internship, and again, like Rick mentioned, I was the guinea pig. I was the first intern to go through this program that they started. So there is, there was some learning and some things that we adapted as we got into it, but just overall felt so prepared. And of course, I mean, always going to be a learning curve, I think, but I felt very prepared just in terms of doing the ordination exams and being prepared for that part of it, but also just sitting in all the session meetings that they had. Being able to sit in, they have meetings every other week, so I got to sit through tons of session meetings, tons of deacons meetings, congregational meetings, and just getting to learn how to handle those parts of the job, so I felt very, very prepared for a lot of that.
So, were you a congregant there before you were an intern?
No, I was in the Boston area, so I went to Gordon Conwell for seminary, and was part of the Acts 29, part of an Acts 29 church plant in the Boston area during seminary, and then after I graduated. But I had grown up in the RCA, and I had some of that Reformed confessional background, even though the RCA is we know what's really happened to that denomination, unfortunately. But I had some of that in my background, and as I was getting ready to enter into pastoral ministry, I really wanted to be part of a confessional Reformed church. And I had known about the PCA through some of the maybe bigger names like R.C. Sproul or Tim Keller or Kevin DeYoung even, and um, so got plugged in with the PCA in the Boston area. But I actually found the internship through the Gordon Conwell Ministry Board, which I think is Rick's doing because he's a graduate from there as well. And so I moved to Richmond and became a member and started the internship all at the same time.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's great. And so we are gonna get into this, but you keep bringing up more questions that I have because the PCA doesn't have a huge presence in New England that I'm aware of, and the churches are, in again, to my awareness, are on the smaller side, and quite frankly, due to the level of political progressive influence in that region of the country, it's much more of a missional mindset in the churches. And again, I'm broad brushing the whole thing, and clearly All Saints is very considered very conservative and confessional, if we want to talk in those categories. And so, were your leanings already there, or did you learn that there?
That almost feels like a chicken and the egg kind of question. I think um, when I was entering into the PCA, which is around 2019 in Boston and then 2020 in Richmond, I got plugged in with the PCA in Boston. Part of was actually also called Christ the King Cambridge, and they were planting several churches in and around the Boston area and in some of the suburbs. I got plugged in with one of those, and with the church plant there that unfortunately fell through and didn't work out. And that's part of the reason why I was actually looking and found the internship at All Saints. That I could get into more of those details if you wanted, but I think yes, there was definitely the explicit stated goal of the Christ the King Cambridge churches there was to be a Redeemer city to city model for Boston. Um, and I at the time I don't think I had the concepts to really understand those distinctions. So going to All Saints And one of the first things I think we read was Tim Keller's article, or maybe you had me read it even before I moved, about his article about why I love the PCA, where he works through those three different camps or impulses in the PCA, a doctrinalist, a pietist, and transformationalist. And so that was really helpful for me to understand maybe some of the culture in the PCA. So I think, and I think this is fair, I don't think I'm just saying this, I think my impulse was always toward that doctrinalist kind of camp. The reason I wanted to join the PCA was to be part of a Reformed confessional church. I really saw the need for that, even in the Acts 29 church I was a part of. So yeah, I think in God's providence, it was really, really beneficial for me. Even though there were some hard years in there and some failed church plants that I was getting to be a part of in Boston, but ultimately bringing me to All Saints in Richmond was all on God's providence.
Yeah, George, I would say when we interviewed Levi for the position, over the phone while he was up in Boston, it was clear to us that he was coming in our direction, and we just wanted to grab him and say, keep on coming.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's, the open arms type thing rather than the suspicion. And, we have there's nothing to be ashamed of when your ministry is characterized by the ordinary means of grace, which is what we're talking about here. So I'm familiar with Keller's article in those categories. And I know actually, Rick, you and I spoke about that at, was it GA or the GRN maybe?
GRN, I think.
Yeah. Outside, in the rain, honestly. We were hanging out in the rain. But essentially it's your philosophy of ministry is one of the ordinary means of grace. And it's something else you and I spoke of, Rick, and, people bristle at that when I say it as if I'm casting shade on maybe, like you mentioned, Levi, the city to city sort of movements. But even just yesterday on Twitter, a prominent, well-known guy in the PCA who casted shade on ordinary means of grace, in quotes, guys. And so clearly, we understand while every PCA pastor is committed to mission and every PCA pastor should be committed to the ordinary means of grace, and I hope they are, that there are people whose philosophy of ministry is driven to one extent, or to a larger extent to one or the other, and maybe there's better categories for it. And that's all I'm referring to here. I'm not throwing shade. I think we all understand that. So cool. Well, Rick, what was the, because my own experience with the internship is the presbytery, I was in South Florida Presbytery, had a packet, and internship and care were kind of combined. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, the BCO spells them out sort of separately, but you can run them concurrently, and that often happens. And I was a member in a church who was a ruling elder, and the deacon, then a ruling elder. And then I came on staff into your role, Rick, and that's when I came under care to be ordained, and I finished my studies. So the internship to me, I was just following the checklist the presbytery had, and it was quite extensive, honestly. And it really, a lot of the areas that you have here were there. I mean, I think my report was 40 pages to fulfill the thing. But I found that I had to really take the initiative to make sure that was happening, and that's not, again, like a negative on my church. I think I was a 40-year-old guy who came from the corporate world, and I just do take initiative. That's kind of what I do. But I have seen in other churches where it's kind of on the intern to figure that out. It's also not always, like, is yours a paid position?
Yes. Okay.
So tell us the genesis of this, your heart behind it. And I'll just highlight one more thing. I keep filibustering, but I like you have a document I'm sure you'd be willing to share with other churches, but it says his primary duty is to learn ministry, not do ministry. He is not another hand on deck, but is in fact being ministered to and trained by the session. So I think that's a really cool way to start a document off on internship. So go ahead, tell us the genesis, the heart behind it, the philosophy of it.
Yeah. So in just thinking about Book of Church Order and how it describes the purpose of internships. And then watching how it unfolded in our presbytery, and they tended to be, one of two things tended to happen. Either it was a large church that had an open position. They needed a youth pastor or a director of outreach, or they just had an open hole in their ministry they needed to fill. And so they would hire somebody to fill that ministry straight out of seminary, and then have him do that work, call it his internship, and then a year later or 2 years later, he'd get ordained and keep doing the same stuff.
Uh-huh.
Or that was option one. Option two was the guy's been involved in the church all throughout college and has led Bible studies, or like you, George, was a ruling elder and did all these different things in ministry. And so we just waived the whole thing. We wouldn't require an internship. And that's what I saw in my presbytery happening, those two things. I'm like, neither of these are what is supposed to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to create a program where we could bring in guys and give them a real internship where they are learning ministry. And as you say, since we are a simple means of grace church, there's a limited number of things that we do. And so our interns, we want them to participate in everything we do before they're done. And that way when they get out, when they take that call to the solo pastorate of a 90 member church, they don't walk in going, well, I don't know how to moderate a session meeting, or I don't know what to do with this pastoral situation, or they've done that. I don't know what it means to teach 4-year-old Sunday school. They've done all that, and they can speak to it directly.
Pause there. I loved that when I was seeing you require them to teach it in every sort of phase and context in the church, which is so awesome.
Yes. So yeah, I have, so our next intern actually starts September 1, and I've got his Sunday schedule laid out for the entire year when he's teaching the adult class, the senior high, the middle school, the little kids.
Well, that's even really helpful too, because it's not sprung on them. They could be thinking ahead about those things, as opposed to like, hey, next month or next week, this is what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So did your church take the presbytery internship? Like, again, my presbytery had a packet and I just worked through it. Did you just take that and reapply it? Like, what did you do?
Yeah. So we took it, and then, we had to make sure we were getting all their check boxes, but then added, our stuff to it. One of the things that we learned early on was that the seminaries were not doing a good job of teaching polity or American Presbyterian history. So we ended up adding both of those to the internship. And I think the Presbyterian history, American Presbyterian history, is particularly valuable when you start working at the larger levels of the church, Presbyterian General Assembly, because when you see things, you go, oh, I know what that is. I might not agree with that, but the church has been doing that for the last 200 years. The doctrinalist, pietist, transformationalist problem has been around for 200 years, and it's not going to go away. And we just need to love each other and work with each other.
Yeah. That's great, Rick. That's
and if you know your American Presbyterian history, you get to see guys from all those camps that were wonderful men that did great work, and so we added what we thought was important to our presbytery. Now,
yeah, I mean, a book that kind of shows maybe some of that is Alan Strange's Empowered Witness. I don't know if you read that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
we did that in our
a
men's study last year.
Yeah, it's kind of a case study in some of those discussions and positions.
We have the interns go through Daryl Hart's Seeking a Better Country, which covers that, American Presbyterianism from the founding of the First Presbytery out.
I would say you're right, by the way. Like, my education, that was a gap in mine, is American Presbyterianism. I knew enough to pass what would be on the test, you know? And so I think that's great that you're supplementing, or complementing what might be lacking in an education, particularly maybe in Levi's, coming from a great college, but one that's not Presbyterian.
Right.
Yeah, I would just, exactly what Rick was saying. And especially coming from a non-denominational or interdenominational seminary. Yeah. So again, like he said, it was a true internship. I wasn't being put into a position that should really be filled by some ordained minister or by an elder. Pastor Dennis Bullock, the pastor there, he was the pastor. The elders were the elders. The deacons were the deacons. I was the intern, and I was learning from them, and then and being put into helpful ministry training situations. But the internship was so helpful because they did supplement those things that I just didn't know and were lacking. And there's a difference between theoretical knowledge of Presbyterianism, but there's a difference between that and really living in a Presbyterian culture. And I think that's what I got by being part of All Saints and being part of a church that really took those distinctives very seriously. So that was a real blessing for me.
So in the BCO, where it requires the internship, Rick, just educate maybe people that don't know our process. How does that relate to care, and what comes first?
You come under care first, so you become under care of presbytery, where they're supposed to be looking out for you. And internship, really is a function of presbytery. So even though we have our plan, we have to submit that to presbytery for their approval. And they're the ones that eventually sign off and say, yes, he's completed his internship. So in that sense, All Saints and myself, as the primary mentor of the interns, I function indirectly as a servant of presbytery in running the internship for them. But typically, the internships are focused at the local church level, but officially they are a function of presbytery. And we put in our description, they don't have to be a member of our presbytery to do an internship at our church. They could be a member of your presbytery, George. They could be under care of your presbytery, see our internship and say, hey, I'd like to do my internship at All Saints, but remain under care of your presbytery. And then we would just modify our plan to make sure we get all of your check boxes for your presbytery. So far, we haven't had one of those. All of ours have been guys like Levi that ended up transferring into our presbytery, came under care of our presbytery, but we're very much ready and have planned towards the eventuality where we're fulfilling it for some other presbytery, where the guy remains under care of his home presbytery.
Right. So the way I can maybe even explain this a little bit to people listening, not like typically a man wants to be ordained and they associate with a church. Maybe they're already at a church, and that church, asks for them to be under care and helps them with this internship. And what Rick is talking about, All Saints is proactively being a training ground for this. Is that accurate to say? Yeah. So, and what I love about this is, so your church has how many teaching elders?
Just the one, Pastor Bullock.
And how many members?
130, 140, somewhere in that range. So
it's, this is not something that has to be done by a large church with tons of resources. And typically the size church that you're at, which I think is a great size, you can, it's a vibrant community. You could do a lot, but you could always use more help. Typically it's viewed as, well, we'll get we have this opening. Let's hire an intern. We don't have to hire a full teaching elder, and we can get, but
cheap labor. Let's just get an intern because he's cheap labor.
But so you're, again, I already quoted that, they're not, because you need, but let's face it, they are helping, right?
They do. So Jacob will teach, our new guy coming in September. he's going to teach 12 weeks of adult Sunday school and 12 weeks of senior high Sunday school before the year's out. And that's, 24 weeks that ruling elders don't have to do that, or the senior pastor doesn't have to do that. So there is a benefit to the congregation that comes, but we're always trying to, it's always in the context of trying to help. So we put together an internship review committee that meets quarterly. This is something we started the year after Levi left. Matter of fact, Levi ran the intern review committee for our second intern when he came on. And so they meet once a quarter. They're teenagers to 70-year-olds, male and female, and they just give feedback to the intern. This is what really was helpful to me about your Sunday school class. This is what was really helpful about your sermon. This is what I didn't follow. And they get feedback from every aspect of the church that way. So even when they're doing ministry, like teaching Sunday school, they're still in class, as it were, because they're going to get feedback from the congregation.
Is that male and female?
Yes.
So Levi, you led that the second go around. Say, what, were you still on staff during that time, or what?
Yeah, I finished my year internship and was looking for a call, and thankfully it worked out to where All Saints actually called me on as assistant pastor. So I was assistant pastor for close to 2 years and planned to be there a little longer, but then ended up taking this call out in Joplin. So but that was wonderful. So I was assistant pastor for a couple of years, and during that time I helped to lead this internship review stuff for the church there with some of the other guys that came on after.
Yeah. I love how you're including teenagers. And once again, that's, so here it's providing the necessary leadership training to the intern, but you're discipling young people in the church to have a voice, to be heard, to contribute. That's like a whole episode in itself, probably, just in general, how we can do that better. But you've incorporated that because it's what you believe. It's great.
Yeah.
So this internship obviously includes preaching and teaching, and it's in your packet here. It's all specified how many times at least it'll occur and in what contexts. And it also talks about creating outlines for classes or training in different contexts. I see like a new members class, so that would be like an inquirer's class, I assume, or whatever you may call it. But also, I thought I saw here for officer training. Is that in here?
Yes. So that, again, Levi can be thinking, or the intern can be thinking about training officers before he's in the midst of having to do it.
Yeah.
We want, many of our guys are going to leave us and go be associate or assistant somewhere, but we want guys to be, like Levi, ready to leave us and go be the solo pastor, and not be scrambling to figure out, what are we going to do for the children's education? What are we going to do for officer training? They've already thought through those things and can ask about them, can ask, while he's there with us. All right, so what do you all do for officer training, and think it through. So we don't ask them to reinvent the wheel, but we give them what we have and let them think it through. And
yeah. And I will say, so I did outlines for officer training while I was an intern. I did officer training outlines and outlines for marriage services and funeral services. And I had to use all three of those within the first couple of years I was here. And that was incredibly helpful to be able to go back and pull from those resources that I was able to work through with Rick, with Pastor Dennis, and the guys at All Saints.
Oh, that's great. I remember the same thing, Levi, that, because I had to do that in South Florida, and I had these things. And, at first I probably viewed, because I was on staff already, I was kind of viewed like, oh, I have to do all this extra work and I'm already kind of doing this stuff. No, it was hugely beneficial because, like you just said, like when you have a funeral that you're responsible for, it's not like you have a month to plan that. You have
Yeah.
You actually are meeting with the family that day that you hear about it, and I learned pretty quick. You start having conversations about, the order of worship for the funeral, and having some context and something to grab, and I honestly, our book of church order has some good stuff on that too in the back. But yeah, having thought through it and then having it, it's really helpful. You also have, a whole bunch of visitation that you do, whether it's hospital shut-ins, prison, or church member visitation. And I just remember myself, like, I was intimidated by that. So the idea that it's spelled out, and, I went with my pastor to do that. And you realize there is sort of a format you can, I'm an engineer. So like, you give me a process, I can follow it, and then I can adapt, and I'm like, oh, this is how he does. And, those visits aren't always long visits. A lot of times you're popping in, and that you just made their day, and then you pop out. But like, understanding how to do that if you've never done it before is tough. So that's why, all this is spelled out. One thing I love about you're very involved in this, right, Rick?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I meet with the interns every week.
Okay. So this I absolutely love. Now, of course, you are a staff member, but you are a ruling elder. But typically it's usually the intern needs a teaching elder, mentor, whatever, and that's usually who's pouring into them. And then of course they go to session meetings and deacon meetings and stuff. But here you have yourself, and it sounds like potentially other deacons are actually shepherding the future shepherds.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I had to, as you say, I have the advantage that this is not my job. They pay me, and they want me to take care of the interns as a ruling elder. But it would be the same, I think, if you had an experienced ruling elder who was retired, who's been a ruling elder for 30 years. So much of what I do with them, what I did with Levi is, we did lunch. Every Wednesday we had lunch. We went over what we were reading together, and then we would just talk about things, pastoral issues. If you've been a ruling elder for 30 years, you've seen a lot of pastoral issues that seminary did not prepare you for. As our pastor said, he often says, this wasn't in the brochure at seminary. They didn't put this pastoral issue in the brochure when they were convinced me to come to seminary. And so just having those lengthy conversations about what it's like to be a pastor is something that, like I say, a ruling elder can do. If he's been faithfully shepherding for 30 years, he's gone through a lot with a lot of people.
Oh, no doubt. And also, typically if you're getting a pastoral candidate who doesn't have like other life experience, the Lord has called them young, they're doing this, it's, like Dr. O. Palmer Robertson often says to me, or to like, the ruling elders are the ones with common sense. Us teaching elders don't know what we're talking about, and there is a sense that like, you guys understand life. And I say you guys, again, I was a ruling elder, but like, we understand life and businesses and, the life of the everyday person who's stumbling into church on a Sunday, maybe in different ways than the teaching elder does. And absolutely, like it's invaluable, the insights and the observations that ruling elders have. And so I just love that you're using that to train the teaching elders. And there's just a cool cycle there, because the Book of Church Order in at least one place, and maybe in others, but talks about how it's the teaching elders' job to instruct the ruling elders on church discipline. In other words, there is this job that when you're a teaching elder, you are going to be teaching and leading your ruling elders based on where you see outages in their own maybe education in this kind of stuff. But here, the process starts with the ruling elders teaching the future teaching elders who are going to go and help lead sessions and do that. So I love that. Levi, on that note, can you think of, like, this is like one of those put you on the spot moments. So, but like, was there any like discussions or moments that stuck with you from those conversations?
Oh, yeah, so many of them. Just thinking about, like you're saying, having the ruling elder and ruling elders being part of that process was very helpful, especially in our context in the two office church, to see that no, it's not just the pastor that's doing the work of ministry, and then there's like a elder board that maybe operates behind the scenes. But what I loved about All Saints was really seeing how involved all the ruling elders were in the ministry of the church and as shepherds of the church. So I know Rick was the primary guy helping with the internship for me, but all the ruling elders there, got to meet with them, get to know them. They poured into me as well and cared for me. So I just really appreciate that. But yeah, a lot of Rick and I had a ton of great conversations, and a lot of it, of course, had to do with internship training and studying and reading books and preparing for exams, but also just building a friendship and being able to, as just a younger guy, talk to him about everything going on in my life. And as I was dating and getting engaged and getting married while I was in Richmond, and having him to talk to through all that, and having him be able to help me not be a dumb young guy and love my fiance and wife well, and just how to lead a family and all those things. There's all kinds of wonderful just conversations and memories I have from my time there.
Where did I see both of you guys? Was it General Assembly, or Levi, did I meet you at Twin Lakes? Like, where did I first meet you this year?
It was at General Assembly, and
we
in
met
the convention hall, also maybe. The more after party too. Yeah.
So it was evident to me because when I saw you guys together, and again here, there is a camaraderie and a dynamic that seems pretty evident, which is really cool. So that's great that you have that. So how many have you had, Rick? How many interns have you done?
We've done one a year, so we'll be starting our 6th now.
Okay.
So we started in 2020, and we're just getting ready to kick off our 6th one.
Yeah, without names, are they all in ministry?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that's, the gentleman who's finishing right now, he's in his last 2 weeks, and the new one starts September 1. He's actually contemplating, he's decided he wants to go back to school and get a THM. But the previous 4 are all in PCA ministry now. Yes.
Okay. So is he going to delay ordination to do that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And will his internship count when he wants to be ordained in a couple of years? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. So you've done this for a few years. What's your desire? Like you initiated this with me again, whether it was a year ago or whatever. Yeah. And I'm always looking for content because, I need stuff to talk about. So what is your desire though to get this information out there, and your heart for the PCA and that and whatever?
Well, you mentioned our size and I wanted to encourage other Simple Means of Grace churches that don't have huge staffs, that it can be done, that you can run a successful internship program, and it's a great way to help your church love and think about the broader church. At first, it was hard for our church. You bring the puppy into the house and then tell them they have to give the puppy away. That was very hard. But after, of the first 2 or 3 interns, they began to get excited because they would hear about Levi. Levi would go off, and that was hard. It's empty nest syndrome. Levi leaves us, and that's sad. But then they hear about the church in Joplin and how it's planting a church in Springfield, and that, that's going well. And they go, we had a part in that. And so the church has gotten very excited about being a part of sending these men out into the world, bringing them in, showing them what we do at All Saints, and then sending them out into the world to go and do likewise. And there's just been a growing excitement, and it's not been hard for me to recruit people to be on that intern review committee, because they want to be a part of it. Some churches get excited about foreign missions, some get excited about church planting. Ours has gotten excited about running these internships.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's church multiplication right there, what you just said. And
Yeah.
it is a mission mindset, and dare I say it is missional, because you're just deliberately pouring into a person that is going to go off, but you're on the same team because it's for the spread of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. So what are, a couple other things I liked about your program. One is you deliberately send them onto conferences, and it seemed like it was pastors' conferences or preaching conferences. Is that right?
Yeah. So they have their, they get paid, as you said, and then they also have an expense account, so they can buy some books or take someone out to lunch. But we put enough in the expense account to make sure that they can go to one conference that year. And then we really try to get them to go to a conference that one of the rest of us are going to, either Pastor Bullock or myself or one of the other ruling elders, so that we can interact around it.
What was yours, Levi? What'd you go to? Do you remember?
We went to the Banner of Truth Eastern Conference. I remember that up in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a lot of good books there. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. What's good about that is, too, it really introduces you beyond your church and your presbytery. PCA pastors, we love our conferences. We love our PCA conferences where we get to interact with other officers in the PCA. I mean, that's so many of our stories of staying connected with the denomination is because of conferences. So, although conferences and podcasts get a bad rap now, like that's like those, it's so, you podcast pastors and PCA pastors just like to go to conferences, and they all serve a purpose, man. So I don't care about that.
So yeah, we've taken the interns to Banner, to GRN, to Coram Deo, Kevin DeYoung, the one that Kevin DeYoung did. So we've done a variety of them.
That's my backyard. I can't believe you were here, Rick, and you didn't tell me. Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. Levi, any final thoughts? Anything we didn't cover that you think would be helpful to people, or whatever?
I think we talked about how obviously the presbytery is involved in the internship, and of course it's an internship of the presbytery. But one of the other things is I was kind of just thinking through it and even writing down a few notes in preparation for this, just my time there. They really emphasized involvement in presbytery, and that was helpful for me entering into a Presbyterian context where it's larger than just the local church. We want to be churchmen, and I think All Saints really modeled that well. And not just teaching Elder Bullock being involved, but so many of the ruling elders are there serving serving on committees in presbytery. And then me being able to be part of that, to attend the presbytery meetings, getting to see that in action, also I think really helped prepare me to be involved in presbytery now as a teaching elder. So yeah, I think that was another part of that internship that was really helpful for me, and just wanting to instill that value and being involved in more than just the local church, but seeing it as we are part of the church, the Presbyterian church in America, and being involved in that broadly was really helpful.
Mike mentioned that Levi and I are both moderating our presbytery this year.
Oh.
So he's moderating Hills and Plains, and I'm moderating James River.
There you go. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can call Rick and ask him, what am I supposed to be doing? help me figure out what to do with this. So, yeah, the internship hasn't ended, Rick. You're stuck with me forever.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, on terms of the pay, the ruling elders listening to this might be interested. what we determined to do was to match what goes on at universities in doctoral programs. If you're getting your PhD in theology, you're paying through the nose. But if you're getting your PhD in chemistry, some university's paying you to do that. And so we kind of did a little research of what guys who are learning and getting paid at the same time are getting paid. And it's not a lot. But, Levi didn't lose weight while he was with us. He wasn't starving. The guys that had real jobs before they come to us usually end up having to take a pay cut to come do this for a year. But I always encourage them that it's the first time anyone's ever paid you to learn. And so, they get enough to cover their rent, pay their food, buy their food. They're not going to be able to go on to any Caribbean vacations while they're with us. So you don't have to pay. It's not like hiring an assistant pastor. So smaller churches can pull this off with their, limited financial resources as well.
Is it enough for a family? Is it enough?
We adjust it based on,
okay.
We'll go up a little more. Now, we haven't had one yet where a guy came in with 4 children.
Yeah.
It's been young couples, no kids, been single guys, because we're, again, getting them mostly right out of seminary.
Right.
And we haven't really had a second career guy yet. So, we'd have to think about what we would do if a guy with 4 kids came and said, "Hey, I want to do your internship." But
it's full time, right? It's like, okay.
It keeps you busy, doesn't it, Levi?
Yeah, you guys kept me very busy.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Well, good stuff. And again, just to highlight to people listening, I just to repeat myself, but the difference in what we're talking about here is All Saints is doing this every year. They're not just saying, yeah, we could do this. This is a commitment the church has made, and I think that's a neat thing. Now, not every church can do that or will do that, but it would be great if you're willing to have an intern. And when I was a new engineer out of college and I started with Procter & Gamble, I entered a training program that wasn't going to start for a couple months. And so what they decided to do was stick me on shifts in a diaper making plant. We were making Pampers and Loves and working with one of the teams, so I was considered management and the teams were, they were considered operators. And, that's not analogous to what's going on here because like you've already indicated, Levi, it's one office, teaching elder, ruling elder. But why I'm telling the story is the team leader said to his team as he's explaining why they're taking me on this team, this guy that they didn't really respect, college educated, but has no real world experiences. We have a chance to make this one right or something like that. And so there is a sense that you want good pastors in the PCA will pour into the guys who are going to be the pastors. And, so that's maybe the takeaway. Well, how can they reach you, Rick, so they can get a copy of what you do or maybe talk to you if there is a church or a session or a teaching elder that wants a session to do this? You're open to phone calls, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So,
okay. What's your email?
Rick at allsaintspres.org, PRES, allsaintspres.org.
There you go. Very easy. Good deal. Well, Levi, good to see you again. And Rick, always great hanging with you.
Yeah.
Thanks, listeners, for listening to the Presbyterian and Reformed Churchmen. I will give a plug for my one and only sponsor, Birmingham Theological Seminary. It's bts.education. Man, I don't know if you've seen what's going on over at BTS, but the place is exploding. They've added so much staff to just handle the growth. The classes that are being offered are off the charts. Amazing professors. It's kind of one thing about their model is the flexibility of their model enables them to have well-known pastors and professors from wherever they live contribute to the program. They offer certificate programs and, of course, MDivs and MAs and DMins and now a THM. And it's just dynamite. And with the new Reader Center, they're really like pouring into pastoral seminary education for guys that will be pastors, and they're sponsoring them to do that. So reach out to Ike Reeder, although really reach out to Dave Latham. Dave Latham is in charge of admissions and communications and that kind of stuff over there at bts.education. They're great at getting back to you. And again, this is Pastor George for the P&R Churchman.